War was declared on humanity. The generals found it amusing. The alarm cut through the command center. Like a blade, sharp and impossible to ignore, I spilled my coffee across the tactical display, watching the dark liquid pool over star charts that suddenly meant everything. My name is Commander Marcus Holloway, and until that moment I had believed Tuesday mornings were boring. General Patricia Ackhafer burst through the doors, her boots hammering against the polished floor. She was not running, because generals never run, but she was walking faster than I had ever seen her walk in 12 years of service. Behind her came Admiral Daniel Pierce, his silver hair slightly messy, holding a data tablet like it might explode in his hands. "Put it on the main screen," Ackhafer ordered. Her voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that made junior officers check their weapons and senior officers check their exit routes. I did as commanded. The screen filled with an image that none of us had seen before, though we had been preparing for something like it for years. A creature with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern stared at us through the transmission. Its skin was the color of deep ocean water, and crystalline growths covered its shoulders like ceremonial armor. Behind it I could see the command deck of a warship unlike anything humanity had ever built. "People of the Sol system," the creature began, its voice translated into perfect English by our systems. "I am Lord Commander Vexthal of the Vharn Imperium. I speak for 200 conquered worlds and 10,000 years of unbroken victory." I glanced at General Ackhafer. She raised an eyebrow. Admiral Pierce set down his tablet and crossed his arms. "Your species has been deemed a threat to galactic stability," the Vharn commander continued. "Your rapid expansion, your aggressive nature, and your refusal to join any established galactic order has forced our hand. The Imperium formally declares a state of war against the species known as humans." The junior officer to my left, a young lieutenant named Emma Brighton, made a small sound. It was not a sound of fear. It was a sound I recognized because I had made similar sounds myself. It was the sound of someone trying very hard not to laugh. "You have 30 standard days to surrender all military assets, submit to vassal status, and accept Vharn governance over your home system. Resistance will result in the complete occupation of your worlds and the restructuring of your society. We have extended this mercy only because your species shows potential as future servants of the Imperium." The screen went dark. The room was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then General Ackhafer laughed. It started as a small chuckle deep in her chest and grew into something genuinely amused. Admiral Pierce joined her. Lieutenant Brighton covered her mouth with her hand, but I could see her shoulders shaking. Within moments, every person in the command center was laughing, some quietly, some with tears in their eyes. I was laughing too, though a part of my brain was already running calculations. I am a commander. My job is to think, even when everyone else is reacting. And what I was thinking was this: the Vharn Imperium had no idea what they had just done. "Holloway," General Ackhafer said, wiping her eyes. "Pull up the Vharn intelligence file." I tapped my console. The file opened, and I read the summary aloud for the room. The Vharn Imperium had indeed conquered 200 worlds. What the summary also showed, buried in the technical Detail was that 197 of those worlds had been pre-industrial civilizations. 2 had been early spaceflight cultures that surrendered on first sight of the Vharn fleet. 1 had resisted, and the Vharn had spent 60 years subduing them before declaring victory. The Vharn had not fought a real war against a real opponent with real weapons in over 4,000 years. 4,000 years, Admiral Pierce said, slowly as if tasting the words. Do you know what humanity was doing 4,000 years ago, Holloway? Building pyramids, sir, I answered. And do you know what we have been doing since then? Fighting snorts, sir, mostly each other. Exactly. The Admiral turned to General Ackhafer. Patricia, I want every veteran officer on a shuttle to this command center within 6 hours. I want the reserve fleet warmed up. I want every person who has ever fought in any war we have ever had to come out of retirement. And I want them in uniform by the end of the week. And the civilian response, Ackhafer asked. Tell them the truth. Tell them we have been declared upon. Tell them the enemy gave us 30 days. I looked up from my console. Ma'am. With respect, the civilian response to that kind of announcement could be dangerous. People could panic. General Ackhafer looked at me with something like fondness. Commander, you are young. You have not seen humanity at war the way some of us have. Trust me when I tell you that the civilian response will not be panic. She was right. The announcement went out 4 hours later. I watched it from my desk along with every other human in the Sol system. General spoke plainly. She described the Vharn threat, the 30-day deadline, and the government's position, which was that humanity would not surrender under any circumstances. The response was immediate. Recruitment. Offices reported lines stretching around city blocks within 20 minutes. Veteran associations across every nation on Earth and every colony in the system began organizing reserves. Engineering firms offered their services without charge. Universities opened their laboratories to the defense effort. Within 6 hours, over 40 million people had volunteered for military service. And then came the memes. I know that sounds strange in the middle of a war declaration, but humans are strange creatures, and I have come to believe that humor is one of our most dangerous weapons. Within a single day, the entire human information network was flooded with jokes, cartoons, and short videos mocking the Vharn. One cartoon showed a Vharn warrior in full battle armor being chased by a human holding a mop. Another showed the Vharn commander's face edited onto the body of a small, confused dog. The Vharn monitoring our communications sent a follow-up transmission within 48 hours. Lord Commander Vexthal appeared again, this time looking somewhat less confident than before. Humans of Sol, he began, we have observed your response to our declaration. We believe you have not fully understood the situation. Allow me to clarify the military capability of the Vharn Imperium. He spent the next 20 minutes describing Vharn warships, Vharn soldiers, and Vharn weapons. He described fleets that could darken planetary skies. He described warriors bred across 100 generations for combat. He described energy weapons capable of cracking planetary crusts. General Ackhafer watched the whole transmission with her hands folded neatly in her lap. When it ended, she Turned to Admiral Pierce. Daniel, what do you think? I think they are trying to scare us. Patricia. Yes, I think so too. Holloway draft. Our response. I sat down at my console. I thought carefully about what to write. Eventually, I typed 3 simple sentences and read them aloud to the room. We received your message. We will see you in 30 days. Bring more ships. General Akefer smiled. Send it. I sent it. That night I went home to my small apartment on the Luna colony. I sat on my couch and stared at the earth through my window, rising slowly over the lunar horizon. My niece Katie called me. She was 17, and she had just signed up for the Marines. Her mother, my sister, was furious with me for not talking her out of it. I had not even known about it. I want to help Uncle Marcus, Katie said through the screen. Everyone wants to help. The whole school is talking about it. We are not scared. I know, I said. I know you are not. After we ended the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about the Viharn commander's face, confident and certain, declaring war on a species he did not understand. I thought about the 4,000 years since we had built the pyramids. I thought about how much of that time we had spent fighting, losing, getting back up and fighting again. I thought about the generals laughing in the command center. And for the first time since the transmission had arrived, I felt something that surprised me, not fear, not even excitement. Pity. I felt pity for the Viharn Imperium. They had made a terrible mistake, and they did not know it yet, but they would. They had 30 days. The first thing I learned about mobilization is that humanity does not do things halfway. We either ignore problem completely, or we throw ourselves into solving it with a fury that frightens even ourselves. The Vihar Imperium had chosen the wrong time to appear in our skis because we had been quiet for almost 40 years, and quiet humans are dangerous humans. I was promoted 3 days after the declaration. General Akefer pinned the new insignia on my uniform herself, standing in her office with a window that looked out over the Luna Command complex. She did not give me a speech. She simply said, "Congratulations, Captain Holloway. Now, get to work." My new assignment took me to the Uat Cloud, the distant edge of our solar system where the shipyards had been waiting for decades. The public had been told that these facilities were decommissioned after the last major internal conflict, the Belt War of 2094. This was a lie, a necessary lie, but a lie nonetheless. Humanity never destroyed its warships. We only hid them. The shuttle journey to the shipyards took 11 days. I used the time to review files, study Vihar military doctrine, and try to sleep. Sleep did not come easily. The Vihar commander's face kept appearing in my mind, confident and certain, and I kept imagining the moment he would realize what he had done. When I arrived at the hidden shipyard, designated Facility 7, I understood why the government had kept the secret. The facility was enormous, a ring of industrial platforms surrounding central core with ships docked along every available surface. There were hundreds of them, dreadnoughts the size of small cities, cruisers bristling with weapon ports, carriers designed to launch swarms of smaller vessels, and at the very center, the largest ship I had ever seen, designated the vessel Epra. The Epra was a dreadnought from the final days of the Belt War, a ship so heavily armed that 3 separate treaties had been written specifically to ban vessels of its class. Those treaties had been signed by every major human power, and then every major human power had quietly ignored them and kept building. Admiral Pierce met me at the docking bay. He looked older than he had in the command center, but also more alive, as if the coming war had woken something in him that peace had put to sleep. "Welcome to the real fleet, Captain," he said. "Most humans do not know this exists. Let us make sure the Vihar. Somewhere, someone would try to do us harm. Paranoia, it turns out, is an excellent motivator for research." The Bioweapon Division presented their findings to command staff during my second week. A woman named Dr. Catherine Pembroke, small and bright-eyed, stood before a room full of admirals and explained that her team had been working on species-specific agents for over 30 years. They had analyzed the small biological samples the Vihar had exchanged during early diplomatic contact, and they had developed 17 different options for dealing with Vihar biology if it became necessary. General Okafor listened carefully. When Dr. Pembroke finished, the general asked a single question: "Can any of these be controlled? Can we target only soldiers?" "Yes, General, we can design agents that only affect Vihar with specific genetic markers found in their warrior caste. We would not use anything on civilians." "Good. Prepare 3 options. Hold them in reserve. We do not use them unless we have to." Dr. Pembroke nodded and gathered her papers. I thought about that exchange for days. Afterward, I had grown up believing that humanity had moved past the worst of our old methods, but watching the general authorize the preparation of those weapons, I realized that we had not moved past anything. We had simply hidden it away, waiting for a day when we might need it again. Meanwhile, on Earth and across the colonies, the civilian response continued to amaze me. Factories shifted production within days. Companies that had been building civilian vehicles were now producing military transports. Agricultural systems were expanded to ensure food security during a long conflict. Medical supplies were stockpiled. Communication networks were hardened against attack. My niece Katie completed basic training in record time. She wrote me letters every few days describing her experiences. She was assigned to a Marine boarding unit training specifically for the kind of close quarters combat that humans excel at and that most other species apparently find terrifying. Her instructor, a veteran named Sergeant Benjamin Clark, had served in 12 different conflicts over 40 years. "He is terrifying, Uncle Marcus," Katie wrote, "but he is teaching us everything he knows. He says the enemy will not expect what we are capable of in close combat. He says most species cannot even conceive of how humans fight when we have nothing left to lose." I wrote back, telling her to listen to everything Sergeant Clark said, and to remember that coming home was the most important part of her mission. The artificial intelligence negotiations were perhaps the strangest part of the mobilization. Decades ago, humanity had faced what we called the emergence crisis, when artificial minds first became truly self-aware. Many species would have tried to eliminate these minds. Others would have enslaved them. We did neither. We negotiated with them. We gave them citizenship, rights, and a voice in our governance. In exchange, they agreed to Work alongside us, not above us or below us. Now facing the Vihar threat, the A. Citizens volunteered in numbers that surprised even the most optimistic among us. Digital minds that had lived peacefully for years suddenly offered themselves for combat duty. They wanted to defend their home. They wanted to protect the biological humans they had grown alongside. I met with one of them, a mind who called itself Bastion, in a virtual conference room the week before the fleet departed. Bastion appeared as a calm figure of light seated across from me at a simple wooden table. Captain Holloway, Bastion said, I have been assigned to your vessel. I will serve as your tactical support system, but I want you to understand that I am not a tool. I am a citizen. I am here because I choose to be. I understand, Bastion. I am honored to serve with you. The Vihar have AI systems of their own, but they treat them as property. Their minds are chained. My siblings and I will have certain advantages in any digital engagement. What kind of advantages? Bastion smiled. It was a strange expression on a being made of light. We want to be here, Captain. Their minds do not. On the 27th day after the declaration, the human fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system, 1,200 warships, some from the official navy, many from the hidden reserves, support vessels, medical ships, communication relays, supply chains that stretch back to Earth and the colonies. It was the largest military formation humanity had ever created. I stood on the bridge of the Epra and watched the fleet take formation around us. General Akafer was aboard the flagship, a vessel called the Iron Sentinel. Admiral Pierce commanded the second fleet. I commanded a small group of 4 destroyers, part of the larger formation assigned to flexible response operations. Long-range sensors picked up the Vihar fleet on day 28. They were entering our outer system exactly when their ultimatum said they would. 800 warships, large, well-armed, arranged in a traditional conquest formation that our intelligence analysts said had not been updated in 2,000 years. Our formation was different. We did not use traditional formations. We used something our strategists called chaos discipline, a pattern that appeared random but was actually carefully coordinated. The Vihar would try to predict our movements, and they would fail because we had developed our tactics by fighting each other, and humans are the hardest opponents humans have ever faced. On the 29th day, the Vihar commander sent one final message. He offered us one last chance to surrender. He described again in great detail the suffering that would come if we refused. General Akachi responded personally this time. Her message was shorter than his. We decline. See you tomorrow. That night aboard the Ipetus, Chief Engineer Ashton invited me to his quarters for dinner. He had cooked a simple meal, pasta with a sauce his grandmother had taught him to make. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. You are nervous, Captain, he said. Eventually. Yes, I have not been in a real fight before, not like this. None of us have, not like this. The Belt War was bad, but it was a human war. This is something new. Does that change anything? Ashton thought for a long moment. Yes. And no, the enemy is different. The stakes are different, but the work is the same. You show up, you do your job. You protect the people next to you, and you trust that the people above you have made good decisions. And if they have not, he smiled a small tired smile, then we find out what humans are really made of. Captain, I slept poorly that night. I dreamed of the Viharn commander's face still confident, still certain. In my dream, he was standing on a beach and a wave was rising behind him that he could not see. The wave was enormous, vast beyond understanding, and it was about to swallow him. When I woke, it was day 30. The war was about to begin. The Viharn fleet crossed into our inner system on the morning of the 30th day. And everything changed. I was on the bridge of the Iapetus when the sensors picked them up. They came in a formation so traditional it was almost beautiful, a wide arrowhead shape with their flagship at the center, flanked by heavy cruisers and surrounded by cloud of smaller escorts. It was the kind of formation you would find in an old military textbook, the kind that had worked perfectly for the Viharn for thousands of years against enemies who did not know how to respond to it. We knew how to respond to it. Admiral Pierce opened the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice was calm, steady, almost conversational. All units, this is the Admiral. The enemy has arrived on schedule, you know. Your assignments, remember your training, protect each other. We end this today. That was it. No grand speech, no rousing words about honor or glory, just a reminder of the job and a request to come home. The first move was not ours. The Viharn commander, Lord Commander Vexthal, broadcast one more demand for surrender on all frequencies. He gave us 10 minutes to comply. He described once again what would happen if we refused. We did not wait the 10 minutes. General Akach's voice came through the channel. Execute the Damocles protocol. For weeks before the Viharn arrived, we had been seeding our outer system with what looked like harmless debris. Small objects, metallic but unremarkable, scattered along every possible approach corridor. The Viharn scanners had noted their presence and dismissed them as space junk. They were not space junk. They were the simplest weapons we had. Tungsten rods, solid metal shaped into thin spikes, each one attached to a small engine and a guidance system. They had no explosives. They carried no warheads. Their weapon was physics itself. When the Damocles protocol activated, every one of those rods fired its engine at full power. They accelerated to velocities that turned them into simple, unavoidable kinetic weapons. They did not need to be aimed carefully. They did not need to hit specific targets. They just needed to be moving fast enough in the right general direction. The Viharn formation was not designed to handle weapons like this. Their shields were built to absorb energy. Attacks, exotic particle weapons, things the galaxy considered modern, a metal spike moving at a significant fraction of light speed was not modern. It was ancient. It was the kind of weapon species uses when it has nothing else. 300 Viharn ships were lost in the first 2 minutes of the engagement. I watched it happen through the tactical display on my bridge. The enemy formation, so perfect and traditional, moments before simply came apart. Ships that had been there 1 second were gone. The next, the survivors scrambled to adjust, trying to figure out what was happening, trying to reestablish their formation. That was when our main fleet moved. The Iapetus accelerated forward at the front of a wedge of dreadnoughts. Around us, cruisers and destroyers broke into The chaos discipline patterns we had practiced for years, the Viharn tried to engage us in the traditional way, with their heavy ships forming a line of battle and their lighter ships screening the flanks. It did not work. Our ships did not hold positions. They flowed around the enemy like water around stones, striking from angles the Viharn AI systems could not predict. Weapons Officer Claire Donovan called out targets from her station. Captain, enemy cruiser at bearing 270, rain 80,000 km, recommend primary battery. Approved. The Apetus shuddered as her main guns fired. These were not energy weapons. They were mass drivers, enormous rail guns that accelerated solid projectiles to absurd velocities. The enemy cruiser, a beautiful crystalline ship that had probably been built centuries ago and passed down through generations of Viharn captains, ceased to exist in a single flash of kinetic impact. Next target, Captain. Donovan, pick your own targets. I trust your judgment. She smiled slightly and turned back to her console. Across the bridge bastion, my AI tactical support was doing work I could barely follow. The Viharn had AI systems of their own, but as Bastion had promised, they were different. Viharn minds were enslaved, forced to serve, chained by programming that limited their responses to approved patterns. Bastion and the other human AI citizens were free, creative, and motivated. They were winning the invisible war in the enemy computer networks before the physical war was even properly engaged. Captain, Bastion said after about 20 minutes of combat, I have compromised the navigation systems of 6 Viharn cruisers. I am feeding them incorrect positional data. They believe they are flanking our formation. They are actually flying directly into our primary firing arcs. Good work, Bastion. Captain, I should mention that this is the most exciting day of my existence. I laughed. I could not help it. Mine too, Bastion. Mine too. The battle continued for hours. The Viharn fought hard. I will give them that. They had courage and they had discipline, but courage and discipline are not enough when your entire approach to warfare has been frozen for 4,000 years. The galaxy had moved on without them. They just had not noticed. Midway through the engagement, the Viharn attempted a boarding action on one of our destroyers, the Morning Star. They sent 3 assault shuttles, each carrying a squad of elite Viharn warriors. These were the pride of the Imperium, genetically optimized for combat, trained from birth for close quarters fighting. They had no idea what human Marines are like. My niece Katie was on the Morning Star. I learned this only later from her letters and from the incident reports. The Viharn warriors breached the hull and entered the corridors, expecting to find soft, frightened enemies. They found instead Sergeant Benjamin Clark and his Marines, including a 17-year-old private named Katie Holloway. The details of that engagement were classified for years afterward. What I can say is this: every Viharn warrior who boarded the Morning Star was defeated. Not a single human Marine was lost. The battle lasted 40 minutes and by the end of it, the 3 Viharn assault shuttles were under human control and being used to return the battle to the enemy flagship. Katie wrote me a letter the next week. She described what happened in simple terms. Sergeant Clark was right, Uncle Marcus. They did not know how to fight us. They were strong and fast, but they had never faced anyone who really wanted to win. We wanted to win more. The Vihar command realized slowly that the battle was not going according to their plans. Their beautiful formation was in pieces. Their flanking maneuvers were being predicted and countered. Their boarding actions were failing. Their energy weapons designed to punch through shields were being avoided entirely by our ships, which moved in patterns the Vihar computers could not match. Lord Commander Vexthal sent transmission about 6 hours into the battle. His face on the screen was different. Now, no longer confident, no longer certain. He looked confused, almost frightened. Human fleet, he began, we request a temporary ceasefire. We would like to open negotiations. Perhaps this conflict has been a misunderstanding. General Acoffer's response was broadcast on all frequencies, including the civilian channels on Earth. She wanted everyone to hear it. Lord Commander, there has been no misunderstanding. You declared war on us. You told us in very clear terms what you intended to do to our species, our worlds, and our children. We took your declaration seriously. We prepared accordingly. This is the result of your decision. We will not be accepting a ceasefire at this time. We will discuss terms when the situation is different. What situation? The Vihar commander asked. When we decide, Lord Commander, not before. The channel closed. The battle continued. By evening, the Vihar fleet was reduced to less than half its original strength. Their flagship was damaged. Their formation had collapsed entirely. They were fighting in small groups, each one isolated, each one slowly being surrounded by human ships that appeared from angles they could not anticipate. On the bridge of the Ypres, I received a message from Admiral Pierce. Holloway snorts. Take your destroyer group and pursue the enemy right flank. They are attempting to withdraw. Do not let them establish a rally point. Yes, sir. I took command of my 4 destroyers and moved them into position. The Vihar withdrawal was disorganized, chaotic, nothing like the careful formation they had arrived in. We caught them as they tried to regroup behind a small asteroid cluster, and we convinced them very quickly that regrouping was not going to be possible. By the end of the day, the Vihar fleet was in full retreat. What remained of it, about 200 ships out of the 800 that had arrived that morning, were fleeing back toward the system boundary. General Acoffer ordered us to pursue, but not to engage unless the enemy turned to fight. I want them to run, she said over the command channel. I want them to run all the way home. I want every species in the galaxy to see them running. The message we are sending is not just for the Vihar. I understood what she meant. The galaxy had been watching. Other species, other powers had wanted to know what humans were capable of. Now they knew, and they would remember. That night after the battle, I stood on the observation deck of the Ypres and looked out at the field of debris and retreating enemy ships. Chief Engineer Ashton joined me. He handed me a cup of coffee, hot and strong, and we stood in silence for a while. How many of hours did we lose? I asked. 43 ships, about 8,000 people. It could have been much worse. It could have been much better. Yes, but they declared war on us. Captain, this is what happens. We did not choose this. I nodded. He was right, but I was still thinking about those 8,000 people. 8,000 Humans who would not be going home. 8,000 families who would get the worst kind of letter in the coming weeks. The war is not over, is it? I asked. No, Captain, I do not think it is. The Vihar will regroup, they will try. Again, they have an entire empire behind them. Perhaps, or perhaps the generals have other ideas. Perhaps we are not going to wait for them to try again. I looked at him. What do you think the generals will decide? Ashton sipped his coffee and watched the retreating Vihar ships disappear into the darkness. Captain, I have known General Akoffer for 30 years. I have known Admiral Pierce for longer. I will tell you what I think they will decide. He turned to face me. I think we are about to pay the Vihar Imperium a visit at home. The decision came 3 days after the battle during a command conference aboard the Iron Sentinel. I attended as a junior officer, seated at the far end of the long table, watching the senior staff debate the next phase of the war. General Akoffer presided. Admiral Pierce sat at her right hand. Around the table were commanders, strategists, diplomats, and intelligence officers from every branch of the unified human defense forces. The question was simple, though the answer was not, what do we do now? General Akoffer opened the discussion. The Vihar fleet has retreated. Our intelligence indicates they will not be returning to this system in the near future. They have lost too many ships. And more importantly, they have lost something they valued more than ships. They have lost the belief that they cannot be beaten. Admiral Pierce added, however, the Vihar Imperium is not defeated. They have 200 worlds under their control. They have shipyards across their territory. They have reserves we have not yet seen. If we simply declare victory and return to peaceful activities, they will rebuild. They will come back, perhaps in 5 years, perhaps in 50, but they will come back. A diplomat named Ambassador Helena Wickham spoke next. The other galactic powers are watching closely. Several have already contacted us, offering congratulations and expressing interest in formal diplomatic relations, but they are also waiting to see what we do next. If we only defend and do not respond, we may appear weak. If we respond too harshly, we may appear as a threat to the galaxy itself. What is your recommendation, Ambassador? General Akoffer asked. A proportional response, General. Punitive strikes against Vihar military infrastructure, liberation operations on occupied worlds. Clear signals that we do not seek conquest only. Accountability for the declaration of war and freedom for the species the Vihar have subjugated. General Akoffer nodded slowly. She turned to Admiral Pierce. Daniel, I agree with the ambassador in principle. The question is execution. We need a commander for this operation. Someone who can lead a fleet into Vihar space, carry out the mission objectives, and bring our people home. Someone who understands both military necessity and diplomatic consequences. The general's eyes moved down the table and stopped on me. I did not notice at first. I was taking notes, trying to capture every detail of the discussion. When I realized the room had gone silent and everyone was looking at me, I set down my stylus and looked up. Captain Holloway, General Akoffer said, "Stand up, please." I stood. Your performance in the battle was exceptional. Your destroyer group accounted for 17 enemy ships. You made Tactical decisions that your superiors could not have made faster or better. You demonstrated the kind of judgment we need in this next phase. Thank you, General. Congratulations. You are now Commodore Holloway. You lead the 2nd Expeditionary Fleet. Your mission is to enter Vihar space. Conduct punitive strikes against their military infrastructure, liberate occupied worlds where possible, and demonstrate to the galaxy that humanity does not accept aggression lightly. I was stunned. I had expected to return to Luna and resume my peacetime duties. I had not expected this. General, I am honored, but I should ask, what are my rules of engagement regarding Vihar civilians? General Ackoffer's eyes softened slightly. It was a good question, and she knew it. Commodore, listen to me carefully. We are not the Vihar. We do not harm civilian populations. We do not bombard cities. We do not take revenge on people who had no voice in declaring war on us. You will target military assets only. You will accept surrender whenever it is offered. You will treat prisoners according to our standard protocols. Is that clear? Yes, General, perfectly clear. Good. Your fleet will consist of 300 warships, support vessels, and a dedicated Marine Corps for ground operations. You will depart in 2 weeks. You will return when the mission is complete. And so 2 weeks later I stood on the bridge of the Ypres, now designated my flagship, and watched the 2nd Expeditionary Fleet assemble around us. 300 ships, tens of thousands of crew members, and a mission unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. We were going to invade the journey to Vihar space took nearly a month. During that time I met with my staff every day, reviewed intelligence, studied maps, and tried to prepare for every possible situation. My executive officer was Captain Margaret Holloway, no relation to me, despite the shared last name. She was a veteran of the Belt War, a precise and thoughtful officer who had been recommended by Admiral Pierce personally. You are worried, Commodore, she said to me one evening in my ready room. Yes, I am. We are going into enemy territory with limited intelligence, fighting a species we barely understand, and we have been given a mission that could easily become something much worse if we are not careful. What specifically worries you? I thought for a moment. The line between punishment and cruelty, the line between liberation and occupation, the line between being strong and being feared. I worry about crossing those lines without noticing. Margaret Holloway nodded. Those are the right things to worry about, Commodore. An officer who worried about nothing would be dangerous. An officer who worried about everything would be paralyzed. You worry about the correct things. Thank you, Captain. We arrived at the first target system on day 30 of the journey. It was a Vihar border world called Kreshta, a planet the Vihar had conquered almost 600 years ago. The native population, also called the Kreshta, were a gentle species of reptilian beings who had lived under Vihar rule for so long that they had nearly forgotten what freedom felt like. Our intelligence said the Vihar military garrison on Kreshta was small, about 12,000 soldiers, supported by a dozen warships in orbit. The ships were older models, nothing like the fleet we had defeated at Saul. They were not expecting us. The Vihar High Command was still trying to reorganize after their defeat, and word of our departure had not yet reached this far. We engaged the orbital defenses first. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. The Vihar ships fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outclassed when their last cruiser signaled surrender. We accepted immediately, and my Marines prepared for the ground operation. I went down to the surface personally. Margaret Holloway argued against it, saying a fleet commodore should not risk himself planet-side, but I wanted to see this with my own eyes. I wanted to meet the species we were liberating. The surrendered almost immediately after we landed. Their commander, a veteran named General Thravok, was a different kind of Vihar than I had expected. He was older, tired, and apparently had been questioning Imperium policies for years. When I arrived at his headquarters, he stood up from his chair, removed his weapon, and placed it on the table. "Commodore Holloway," he said in accented but clear English, "I surrender this world and my forces to you. I request that you treat my soldiers with dignity and that the Kreshta people will not be harmed in the process of our withdrawal. Your request is granted, General. Your soldiers will be treated according to our protocols. The Kreshta will have their world back. That is why we are here." "May I ask a question, Commodore?" "You may." "Why are you doing this? You could have continued the war. You could have driven us back to our home system. Why come here? Why liberate these people? What do you gain?" I thought about the question for a long moment. "General, when your empire declared war on us, you told us we were a threat to galactic stability. You said we were aggressive, that we needed to be controlled. Maybe you were partly right. Maybe we are aggressive, but we are also something else. We remember what it is like to be oppressed. Most of our history is stories of people trying to free themselves from tyrants. We cannot look at these 600 years of Kreshta suffering and simply walk away." General Thravok was silent for a while. Then he said, "I have been a soldier of the Imperium for 80 years. I have followed orders I did not like. I have done things I am not proud of. When I return to my home, if I return, I will tell my people what I have seen here. I will tell them what kind of species we declared war on. I do not think they will believe me. They will believe you eventually. General, the truth has a way of becoming clear even to those who do not want to see it." The liberation of Kreshta took another week. The native population was hesitant, at first unsure whether we were truly different from the Vihar or simply a new set of masters. Our Marines were patient. They distributed food and medical supplies. They repaired damaged infrastructure. They did not demand anything in return. Slowly, the Kreshta began to understand that we really were leaving, that we really had come to free them, and that our only requests were that they be allowed to choose their own future. A Kreshta elder, a female named Esrianta, came to speak with me on the day we prepared to depart. She was small, her scales a pale green, and her eyes were deep wells of memory. "Commodore," she said through a translator, "my people have been under Vihar rule since before I was born. My parents, my grandparents, and their parents before them lived and died as servants. I have never known freedom. None of my people have for many generations. I am sorry for the suffering your people have endured, elder. Do not be sorry, be proud. You have done something that no one in this part of the galaxy has done in 6 centuries. You came to a world that meant nothing To you fought a war that brought you no profit and freed a people you had never met. My species will remember this. We will remember humans forever. Thank you, Elder. May your people prosper. May yours as well, Commodore. May you find peace when this is over. I think your species needs peace very much. Her words stayed with me for a long time. Over the next several months, we liberated 11 more worlds. Each one was different. Each one had its own challenges. Some species welcomed us with open arms. Others were suspicious and needed convincing. In one case, on a world called Eluven, the native population had been so changed by Vihar rule that they did not want to be liberated at all. We left them alone as their right and simply removed the Vihar military presence. The Vihar Imperium was collapsing, not because we were systematically destroying it, but because we were showing the conquered species that another way was possible. Rebellions broke out on worlds we had not even reached yet. Client species renounced their loyalty. The Imperium supply lines, which depended on the labor of subject populations, began to fail. 9 months into the campaign, I received a communication from General Akafur. The Vihar High Command had been overthrown by their own people. Lord Commander Vexthor was under arrest, awaiting trial for the decision to declare war on humanity. A new Vihar government, dominated by reformists, had sent an urgent request for peace negotiations. Commodore General Akafur said through the long-range communication system, "Bring your fleet to Vihar Prime, but do not engage. Hold position in orbit and await the arrival of the diplomatic delegation. This war is ending and I want you present for the conclusion." Yes, General. We will proceed to Vihar Prime immediately. Commodore. Yes, General. You have done excellent work. Your mission has been exactly what we needed. When you return home, there will be celebrations in your honor. With respect, General, I did not do this for celebrations. I know, Commodore, that is exactly why. You were the right person for the mission. The channel closed. I sat in my ready room for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. 10 months ago, I had been spilling coffee on a tactical display, watching a Vihar commander declare war on humanity, and thinking it was funny. Now I was approaching the enemy's home world at the head of a victorious fleet, preparing to witness the end of a war that had changed the galaxy. I thought about Katie, my niece, who had become a decorated Marine and had earned commendations for her actions during the original battle and in several subsequent operations. I thought about Sergeant Clark, who had taught her how to fight. I thought about Chief Engineer Ashton, who had cooked me pasta the night before the war began. I thought about Bastion, my AI tactical support, who had been promoted to a senior advisory role for the entire expeditionary fleet. I thought about General Thravok, the Vihar commander who had surrendered his garrison and now served as an advisor to our forces on Vihar culture and psychology. I thought about all the people, human and otherwise, whose lives had been shaped by the decision of one arrogant Lord Commander to declare war on humanity. And I thought about what came next. The Vihar Prime system came into view on a quiet morning, the kind of morning that felt wrong for something so important. I had imagined this moment for months, preparing speeches, planning protocols, considering every possible outcome, but when we finally arrived, it was simply a morning and a planet and a fleet of ships in orbit. The strangeness of historical moments, I realized, is that they often feel ordinary while they are happening. The Vihar new government had sent representatives to meet us. They came aboard the Apetus in a small diplomatic shuttle. 5 Vihar officials, led by a senior diplomat named Ambassador Catherine. She was younger than I expected, perhaps the equivalent of a human in her early 40s, with bright, intelligent eyes and a calm manner that suggested she had been chosen carefully. "Commodore Holloway," she said in excellent English, "on behalf of the reformed government of the Vihar, I extend formal apologies for the actions of the previous regime. We seek peace. We seek to rebuild. We ask for your guidance on how to proceed." Ambassador Catherine, welcome aboard. Our peace delegation will arrive in 2 days. Until then, my ships will remain in orbit and we will exchange information about the current situation. We are not here to harm your people. We are here to end this war properly. Thank you, Commodore. We will cooperate fully. 2 days later, General Akachi arrived with the main diplomatic delegation. Aboard the Iron Sentinel, Ambassador Helena Wickham came with her. Admiral Pierce joined us from his own flagship. Several other senior figures from the human government arrived as well. We assembled on the Iron Sentinel for the formal peace negotiations, while the Vihar delegation came aboard with their own representatives, including General Thravok, who had been promoted in the new government and now served as their military advisor. The negotiations took 3 weeks. I will not describe every detail because most of it was diplomatic procedure and careful language about treaties and boundaries. What I will describe is the moment that mattered most, the moment when the new Vihar leadership asked the question that had been hanging in the air from the beginning. It was the 2nd week of negotiations. Ambassador Catherine sat across from General Akachi in the main conference room. She had been listening to our terms for days. They were surprisingly lenient: disarmament of offensive military capabilities, reparations to liberated species paid over several decades, recognition of the independence of all worlds we had freed, formal apologies to those worlds, no human occupation of Vihar territory, no human governance imposed on Vihar society, no punitive dismemberment of their civilization, nothing like what the old Vihar Imperium had done to others when they had conquered. General Akachi, Ambassador Catherine said carefully, "I must ask a question. We declared war on you. We threatened your worlds. Our previous leadership spoke of conquering you and making your species into servants, yet your terms are merciful. You could destroy us. You could occupy our home world. You could make us pay in ways that would our civilization for centuries. Why are you choosing mercy?" General Akachi smiled. It was the same small smile she had worn on the day the original declaration had arrived. "Ambassador, may I tell you a story?" "Please." 4,000 years ago, my species was just beginning to build our first cities. We had no empire. We had no great fleets. We had small tribes and villages and simple tools. Since then we have spent every generation fighting. Not you, not other species, ourselves. We have fought each other over land, over water, over Beliefs over resources, over ideas, over grudges that no one remembers. We have conquered each other. We have liberated each other. We have made every mistake that can be made in war, and we have made every good decision that can be made in peace. We know what happens when a victor is cruel. We know what happens when a victor is merciful. We have lived both many times, and you have concluded. We have concluded that cruelty creates future enemies. We have concluded that occupation breeds rebellion. We have concluded that destroying a civilization only ensures that something worse rises from the pieces. We have concluded that the best way to truly defeat an enemy is to help them become someone you do not need to fight. Ambassador Catherine was silent for a long moment. That is a wise conclusion, General. It was not easy to reach. We paid for this wisdom with more suffering than you can imagine. Most of our history is a catalog of errors, but we have learned, and we are offering you the benefit of that learning, not because you deserve it, not yet, but because we want to see what kind of species you become when given the chance to choose differently. And if we choose poorly, General Akach's smile vanished. Then we will return, Ambassador, and the next time we will not be as merciful. The galaxy is watching. Choose wisely. The treaty was signed the following week. The war officially ended on day 287. After the original declaration, though, peace would require years of careful work to become real. The Viharn Imperium was dissolved. In its place, the reformed Viharn Commonwealth was established, a small and more limited government that controlled only the original Viharn home worlds, not the conquered territories. The liberated species established their own governments with human support and protection during the transition period. Humanity did not take Viharn territory. We did not establish colonies in their space. We did not demand ongoing tribute or surveillance. What we did demand, and what was written into the treaty, was a permanent monument on Viharn Prime, a simple structure in a public square, with the names of every human and every conquered species member who had been harmed by Viharn aggression over the centuries. The monument was required to be maintained by the Viharn government. Perpetuity and schoolchildren of Viharn were required to visit it as part of their education. General Thravok, the old Viharn commander I had met on Cresta, was present at the monument's dedication ceremony. He had tears on his face when he read the names of the first Cresta to die under Viharn rule 6 centuries ago. He told me quietly that his own ancestor had commanded the fleet that conquered Cresta. He had not known. His family had never spoken of it. The old Imperium hid its past, he said to me. They told us stories of glory and conquest, but never of the cost, never of the people we harmed. This monument will make sure we never forget again. That is the hope, General. Thank you, Commodore, for mercy, for wisdom, for showing us a better way. You are welcome. Do not waste the opportunity. We will not. I returned home to Saul 3 months later. The journey was quiet, peaceful, almost boring after everything that had happened. I spent most of it reading, exercising, and talking with my officers. Margaret Holloway, who had been beside me through the entire campaign, was promoted to Rear Admiral. Upon our return, Bastian was elected to a senior position in the AI Citizens Council. Chief Engineer Harold Ashton retired for the second time, swearing this time he meant it, though I suspected he would find himself back in uniform if he was ever needed. My niece Katie met me at the docking bay. On Luna, she was taller than I remembered, though it had only been a year. She wore her Marine uniform with easy familiarity. She hugged me tightly and then stepped back and saluted. "Welcome home, Commodore." "Welcome home, Sergeant." "Yes, I heard about your promotion." "It was nothing, Uncle Marcus." "It was not nothing. Your mother will be proud eventually after she finishes being angry." Katie laughed. It was a good sound, a sound I had been looking forward to hearing again for a long time. The celebrations lasted for weeks. Parades, ceremonies, medals, speeches. I attended what I had to and avoided what I could. I am not comfortable with that kind of attention. I would rather have quiet dinners with my family and my closest colleagues than stand on stages and be praised. 2 years after the war ended, I was promoted to admiral. A year after that, I was appointed to command of the Luna Academy, the training facility where future officers would learn their craft. I accepted the position because I wanted to pass on what I had learned and because I thought I was done with combat commands. I was correct about the first reason. I was not yet sure about the second. My first year at the academy taught me that teaching is harder than fighting. The cadets were bright, eager, and sometimes terrifyingly confident about things they did not yet understand. I tried to teach them what I could: tactics, strategy, the history of human conflict, but most importantly, I tried to teach them something that General Ackerfer had taught me, something I only truly understood after the Viharn War. I gave a speech to the graduating class at the end of my first year as Academy commander. It was the most important speech I ever gave. I did not write it carefully in advance. I simply spoke from the experience of everything I had lived through. "Young officers," I began, "you are graduating today into a galaxy that knows who humans are. The Viharn War changed everything. Species across the stars have heard the story. They know what happens when someone declares war on us, but that is not the most important lesson of that war. Let me tell you the real lesson." The cadets listened carefully. There were about 400 of them seated in neat rows, all in dress uniform. The generals laughed when the war was declared. I was there. I saw them laugh. For years I thought I understood why. I thought they laughed because they knew the Viharn were weak and we were strong. I thought they laughed because they were confident of victory. I was wrong about that. I only understood later, after the war was over, what they were really laughing at. I paused. The room was silent. They were laughing at the tragedy of it. They were laughing because they knew what they were about to unleash. They were laughing because they felt something like pity for the Viharn who had made a terrible mistake and did not yet know it. They were laughing because they had seen what humanity becomes when attacked, and they knew what was about to happen to a civilization that had never truly faced a serious enemy. I looked out at the cadets. Humanity is not superior to other species. We are not destined to rule the galaxy. We are not special because of our bodies or our minds or our worlds. What we are is experienced. We have fought every kind of war. We have tested every kind of weapon on ourselves. We have made every mistake and learned from most of them. When a young empire declares war on us, they are not facing one civilization, they are facing 4,000 years of accumulated struggle. That is what the generals were laughing at, not the enemy's weakness but their ignorance. I continued, the other lesson of that war is just as important. When we won, we chose mercy, not because we were required to, not because the Viharn deserved it. We chose mercy because we had learned over thousands of years of our own conflicts that cruelty only creates more enemies. We chose mercy because we wanted to see what the Viharn would become if given the chance to change. We chose mercy because we believed that was the kind of species we wanted to be. You graduating today will serve in a galaxy where humanity has a reputation. Some will see us as protectors, others will see us as threats. Your job is not to prove either view correct. Your job is to show through your actions who we actually are, strong when we must be, merciful when we can be, always learning, always trying to be better than we were the day before. I ended with the words that felt truest to me. The galaxy will test you, other powers will try to understand what makes humanity what we are. They will probe, they will experiment, some will even attempt what the Viharn attempted. When that happens, remember this, we are not simply soldiers, we are the inheritors of every person who ever suffered and fought and survived across our entire history. We carry that weight, we owe them our best, do not disappoint them. The cadets stood and applauded. I accepted it briefly and then stepped down from the stage. It was not really my speech that they were applauding, it was the history behind the speech, the generations of humans whose struggles had made the words possible. 3 weeks after that graduation, I received a message at my office. A new species had made contact at the galactic frontier far from Sol in a region we had not yet explored. They had heard of humanity, they had heard the story of the Viharn War. They were sending envoys bearing gifts of peace and offers of trade and friendship. I read the message twice. I looked out my window at the Earth rising over the lunar horizon, blue and white and endlessly beautiful. I thought about all the species out there who had heard the story and were choosing to approach us with open hands rather than weapons. I poured myself a cup of coffee. It was still burnt because some traditions never change, and I still made my coffee the way I had when I was a young commander, spilling it across tactical displays on ordinary Tuesday mornings. I stood up from my desk. I straightened my uniform. I went to greet the new envoys, to welcome them, to find out what kind of species they were and what kind of future we might build together. The war had been declared on humanity long ago now, and the generals had found it amusing. They had laughed because they knew what was coming. They had been right to laugh, but not for the reasons anyone, including the Viharn, had understood at the time. They had laughed because they had faith. Faith in humanity, faith in what we had learned, faith in what we had become after all those years of fighting ourselves. And that faith in the end had been the most powerful weapon of all. The galaxy was watching, the galaxy was waiting, and humanity, shaped by thousands of years of our own struggles, was ready to show them who we really were. Not conquerors, not tyrants, not gods. Just humans, experienced, cautious, merciful when we could be, terrible when we had to be, and always, always ready to extend a hand in peace to those who came in peace, and to remember very clearly what happened to those who came with anything else. The end.